Hello everyone, I'm Bruffy1322 and welcome to another GTA discussion video where we're going to be analysing in full the Cunning Stunts DLC. Now these are videos that I tend to always do after we get a DLC where I basically just go through everything that we got from the update, talk about it, give my thoughts about it, ask you guys your opinions about it as well. And since we now have everything that we're going to get from the Cunning Stunts update, it's time to do the same for that. Now this video is going to be focused solely on the cars because we've actually got 19 different vehicles with this update from the Cunning Stunts DLC, so it's a lot. And then in the next video, which will be out in a couple of days, I'm going to be talking more about the race creator, stunt races in general, you know, all the extra added features and just the DLC as a whole. But for this first video it's going to focus all on the cars, and these videos are normally quite long, they're normally quite involved. I do normally sort of talk a lot and I do like to ramble a little bit, so I do apologise if that's not your thing, but I will leave some links in the description if you want to, some timestamp links if you want to sort of come back after you watch 5 minutes and then skip to certain sections or whatever you want to do, however you want to watch these videos, or you can just watch it all in one go and listen to me ramble on for however long this is going to end up being. So I think the main takeaway from this DLC in general is that Rockstar do listen to the community, but they still like to do things in their own way, and I think that is systematic of what we've seen from Rockstar in the past, because a lot of the things that we've seen from this DLC I've said before, and I've obviously, for those of you who are new to the channel, I've done big pushes in the past for racing style DLCs. I've put things up there on Rockstar support forum posts, and they've become very highly liked and things like that about racing DLC ideas. I will leave some links in the description again, like as always with my videos. There's a lot of information and extra links in the description to all this kind of stuff, but a lot of the things that we've seen from this Cunning Stunts DLC seem like they've been just cherry picked directly from suggestions that I've made in the past, and suggestions that I've sort of got you guys who aren't necessarily new, who've been with me for a while. We used to do sort of email campaigns at various stages with certain ideas that we'd like to see, and we've seen quite a lot of that introduced. Now a lot of that is to do mainly with the race creator and things like that, which I'll be talking about in the next video, but we've also seen quite a bit of that introduced with the vehicles. Now I'm going to start by talking about the 3 new supercars, because there's been quite a few occasions in the past where I've made the statement that it would be nice to get a car that can go under 1 minute in terms of lap time around my testing track, because previously we only had the Akuma and the Barty. Those were the only 2 vehicles that could ever break that 1 minute barrier. I've always said that it would be nice to have some cars that are really quick that can actually break that barrier as well, and we got that with the RE7B, the ETR1 and the Tyrus, and they are clearly meant to be thoroughbred racing cars. Obviously the RE7B is pretty much an old Group C car, a Le Mans style car that you know, very quick, sort of the next level down in terms of speed from Formula 1. It's obviously meant to be very quick. You've got the ETR1 and the Tyrus, which are based off proper racing cars, and racing cars in general are always quicker than road cars, especially around a track, and so they fit in with that perfectly, and racing cars in real life never have the highest top speeds of anything, so again that fits in there as well. You know, the Bugatti Veyron, for example, has a higher top speed than a Formula 1 car under most circumstances, but it's never going to go around a track quicker. So they all fit in perfectly with having the idea of a racing car, a thoroughbred proper racing car in GTA. But I've always put a caveat with that statement that they should go in their own class, because what we've seen obviously is that they've just been put straight into the supercars class and they completely dominate. So the supercars class before this update used to be the most balanced class that we'd ever seen throughout the whole of GTA since its inception. You know, we had 8 different vehicles, all separated by about a second in terms of lap time. Some vehicles that were quicker than others on certain types of tracks, and it was unbelievable balance just after the Finance and Felony update. And then the next update after that is Cunning Stunts, and we get given these 3 new cars that completely demolish everything and ruin that balance, because really you can't use anything other than these 3 cars in anything other than, you know, random races with people who can't drive. And the RE7B in particular is just much quicker, and that's even without talking about the bug that I've mentioned in previous videos. That's without that, it's just the quickest. So we've gone from having a very, very balanced supercars class to a very, very unbalanced one. And as I've mentioned in previous discussion videos before, I don't care about that anymore. It's too late for me. You know, I'm going to talk a lot about class balance, and I'm going to mention it, and I've said this in previous videos that that's the way that I'm going to go with this going forward. I'm going to mention it, I'm going to say what Rockstar have done wrong in terms of class balance, but there's no point in me trying to persuade them otherwise, or try to get cars change classes, because we've tried to do it all before. We've sent so many emails and so many support posts got upvoted. The #1 support forum post on the Rockstar support website is from me about class balance. Like, you know, if things like that don't cause them to change, they're never going to change. So I've stopped caring about it. We'll try to do events with specific vehicles in our crew. It's just a shame that people are forced to sort of spend a lot of money on a T20 or a Cyrus or an X80, and then 3 brand new cars come out that are very expensive that you pretty much have to buy, and that's clearly the way that they go with that. But there's nothing that I'm going to be able to do now, and I've lost all hope that any sort of class balance matters to them, so we're not going to focus on it too much in terms of trying to get it changed. But it is still a shame to see that. Now, the 3 new supercars are fantastic. They shouldn't be supercars, they should be race cars, but in terms of actually having proper race cars in the game, that's really great. They're difficult to get used to, they're so much quicker than everything else, and it's just it's brought a bit more sort of new life into the game in terms of the absolute quickest that you can possibly go around a circuit. So they're good additions. Taking out the class balance stuff, I like them, they're good additions. There's the sort of thing that I've always wanted with the racing liveries and all that kind of stuff. And the racing liveries have been quite a common theme to see on quite a few of the cars that we've seen. And again, this is something that I've talked about in previous videos, and something that I've put to Rockstar themselves and suggested, to have cars with racing liveries. It's nice that we can take them off as well and have completely clean cars, but those racing liveries are great. And moving on to the sports class, we have that as well. First of all, with the Omnis and the Tropos Rallye, the 2 new Rallye cars. Obviously, in terms of the sports class, there are a lot of cars in the sports class close to the top end that are usable in races. The Omnis and the Tropos Rallye, they aren't too far off, you know, they're not too bad, but they can't compete with the top sports cars like the Elegy or the Felter or whatever. They're not going to be able to do that, but they do off-road, you know, and that's where their strength lies. And it's great to have some proper rally cars off-road. The Kuruma really was the only one in the past. We had the Sultan RS, which had, you know, the liveries, and obviously you could take it to Benny's and stuff, but it was in the supercars class for some bizarre reason, you know, still don't understand that. And that was actually the Banshee 900R and the Sultan RS being put in the supercars class is what made me sort of give up on class balance allocation and stuff like that from Rockstar. That was the turning point. But the Sultan RS wasn't any better off-road than any other supercar, and actually the Kuruma in the sports class is quicker than the Sultan RS in an off-road situation. So we never really had, apart from the Kuruma, proper rally cars really, and certainly nothing that could actually take it to the Kuruma in a sports class race. The Kuruma was just easily the quickest because it has an off-road traction loss of 0. Although it does tend to roll over a little bit, it's still the quickest as long as you can handle it, as long as you can manage it and you learn the car. But now we've got the Omnis and the Tropos Rallye, which are a tiny bit slower than the Kuruma still off-road, but they are certainly there on the pace, and certainly a lot more consistent as well. You know, you're not really likely to roll over the Tropos Rallye or the Omni. So that is perfect for what we need to do if we want to do rally cross races and rally events in general. Those cars fit in perfectly with the liveries, with the style that you have to drive with them as well. You know, they feel like rally cars, obviously very different styles, but they feel great to drive. And they're probably, for me, the best two editions of the entire DLC. The Omnis and the Tropos Rallye, I have to say, those are my two favourite cars from this DLC, and I'm really, really happy that they were introduced. Now, on the other end of the spectrum, for the sports class and the DLC in general, we've got the Lynx, which just makes no sense whatsoever. It's so slow in comparison to the top sports cars. It would actually be better placed in the coupes class. It would be the quickest in the coupes class, but it would at least give us something extra to race in that class. And the most unbelievable thing about it is that its price is ridiculous. It's $1.7 million for a bog standard car that is... Its performance is terrible. It has an okay top speed, but it's certainly not the best. And it's easily the most expensive sports car in the game by a long, long way. And anybody who buys it for anything other than the way that it looks is losing out. And it's just a typical Rockstar move to put in a car that is so overpriced and so expensive that fools people, really. You know, people could quite easily, and there was quite a few people who said this in comments and things, that they bought it because it was so expensive, expecting it to be the quickest, or at least be competitive. And it just isn't. It's just nowhere near. And I can't understand the price for that. You know, take a zero off the end of it and then it would be reasonable. That you know, it's just, I can't understand why they put that in for that price. And I'm not too fond of the looks of it. You know, the way that it drives is horrible as well. The Lynx is probably my least favourite of all the vehicles from this DLC. The Omnis and the Tropos Rallye are my favourites. The Lynx is definitely my least favourite. And yeah, just no idea what they were thinking making that cost so much. Now, moving on, also in the sports class, we have... let's talk about the Buffalo first, because the Buffalo was part of the game anyway. You know, we already had the Buffalo race car in the game in single player for returning players only. It was a special, you know, if you transferred your character, or you had the game on Xbox 360 or PS3, when you transferred to PS4 and Xbox One, in single player there were special races that you could do as Trevor that unlocked these vehicles. And for a long time, again, this is going back to something that I've always pushed for and always been asking them to do, I've always wanted those special race car vehicles put into GTA Online. We've done some events with them before they were available to be released, by using the trainer on PC to spawn them in, and they were always great fun. And the Buffalo race car in particular is such a lovely car to drive. It's so well balanced and just so nice. Obviously, it's not on the pace in terms of the top sports cars, but just giving people that option to use it in a race and to buy it and access it is something that I've always pushed for. So it's really great to see that we've got those now, and that's a great addition. And like I've always said, it doesn't really cost them anything in terms of they don't have to, you know, completely develop a brand new vehicle. The vehicles are already in the game. They just have to make them available to GTA Online. And I hope that we also, in the future, and not too far off, get the Blister Compact race car and the Duke of Death as well. I don't see any good reason why those can't be put into GTA Online these days, now that we've been given the Buffalo and the other muscle cars. They might as well just make everything available in GTA Online. So hopefully we do see those, but it's great that we've got the Buffalo. And also, moving on to the muscle cars class, it's great that we've got the three new muscle cars as well. Again, these were already in the game, but the Dominator race car, the Pisswasser Dominator, is one of the best cars to drive. It's probably one of my favourite cars to drive in the game. I absolutely love it. I always have done when we've done events with it in the past that we, you know, technically weren't meant to be doing or weren't meant to have access to the vehicle, but it was always just such a lovely vehicle to drive, so difficult to make the most of. And the going back again to class balance, the muscle cars class was very, very well balanced. At the top we had the regular Dominator, the Coquette Blackfin. We had even the Ruiner was up there, the Dukes. You know, there were a lot of vehicles at the top of the muscle cars class that were usable in races. And then the Sabre Turbo Custom was released and completely ruined that. The Sabre Turbo Custom was much quicker than everything else, and it completely ruined the class balance for the muscle cars class. And even when that was released, I remember saying that, you know, if we had the Dominator race car, the Pisswater Dominator, because I had already tested it through various means, it would have brought back some balance to the class. So it's not only the Sabre Turbo Custom that you could use, but you could also use the Pisswater Dominator as well. And that's been the case, because the Pisswater Dominator isn't that far off the Sabre Turbo Custom in terms of lap time. It's quicker in a straight line as well. So we've been given some balance back to the muscle cars class, and that's good. That's always nice to have two different options at least. You know, when you've just got one class that is completely dominated by one vehicle, that's when it starts to get a bit boring, and you don't, you know, I don't think I did muscle car races for the majority of the time when, you know, since the Sabre Turbo Custom has been released, but it's more viable now because people kind of have a choice. You can use the Sabre Turbo Custom, but you can also use the Pisswater Dominator, which might be a little bit off the pace around a normal track, but it's at least close, and you have that balance there. So also great to see that we've got the Gauntlet and the Stallion back as well. You know, just again, giving us some extra options and making more cars available is never a bad thing. But the reason that I didn't talk about the Tampa as part of the sort of sports cars mini section is because another complete misappropriation of where this car should be. This car should have been in the muscle cars class. There's absolutely no doubt about it. The Drift Tampa, I just cannot understand why it wasn't put in the muscle cars class. After I've just said everything that I did about class balance, we had the Sabre Turbo Custom, and then we finally get given the Dominator race car, which would be right on the pace. The Drift Tampa would have split them. It would have been right in the middle, and we would have gone from having one option in muscle car races to having three. But they put the Drift Tampa in the sports cars class. It makes absolutely no sense. It's way off the pace. The regular Tampa is in the muscle cars class. The Drift Tampa, I just don't know why it's in the sports class. And people try to rationalize it with, you know, it's not meant to be a racing car, or you're not meant to race with it. But putting it into the muscle cars class and making it available to race doesn't take away from what it is. It just adds an extra feature and adds an extra layer to the car that you can also use it in races if you want, because it is at the top of the muscle cars class with the, you know, very balanced with the other two. So it just makes no sense to me, and that's the biggest disappointment. And the Drift Tampa, probably, if I hadn't have given up on Rockstar's ability to classify vehicles correctly, the Drift Tampa to me would have been the one thing that pushed me over the edge, just like the Sultan RS and the Banshee 900R did when we got those. You know, just unbelievable. But like I said in the testing video, one of the biggest class allocation travesties in the history of the game, that it's so well balanced for the muscle cars class, and it's put into the sports class, and it's completely useless. Once again, if anybody hasn't seen the testing videos for these, the links will be in the description. I imagine everybody who's watching this will have done by now, but yeah, the links are in the description. So that's sort of getting rid of the standard classes, if you like. Let's now move on to the off-roads class, because it's another level of frustration that if I still cared, I would be very, very frustrated with what they did to the off-road class as well. And I have to say that not caring anymore like I do, and sort of giving up on Rockstar in this respect, it's made me happier. It's made me enjoy the game a bit more, because I'm not constantly, you know, sick or annoyed about the decisions that they've made. I kind of expect it now, and we'll just work around it as best we can. We'll try to make our own events and things like that. But in terms of, you know, getting Rockstar to have any sort of knowledge or put in any good class balance in terms of the cars, it's just not going to happen. So yeah, on to the off-road class. We've got the Trophy Truck and the Desert Raid. They are great additions, in my opinion. I think they are great vehicles. They're a lot of fun to drive. They're very close together. They're very well balanced between themselves, and they also showed to be very well balanced with the Sanchez as well. So in an off-road race, we had pretty much the perfect thing. The Sanchez was still a little bit quicker by sort of less than a second or something like that. Obviously, the Sanchez has a very, very high top speed as well. So for a long time, the Sanchez was completely dominant in the off-roads class, even though it's technically in the motorcycles class, which I've talked about plenty of times before. But The Sanchez was completely dominant across all of the vehicles, and we finally got given 2 vehicles that could take it to a Sanchez. They were decent around the track, didn't have the highest top speeds, but they were quite good off-road in terms of their off-road traction loss. I think it was their off-road traction loss is 0.15 if I remember correctly, so very, very good in that respect. And they could take it to the Sanchez, so we finally had some class balance in a class that we've never had class balance on in before. You know, the Sanchez has been dominant from the start, so it was great to see. And then we got the BF 400, and it just completely undermined all of that and demolished everything else before it, and we were back to square one, because the BF 400 has an off-road traction loss of 0, so it's better than the trophy truck and the Desert Raid. It is in the motorcycles class, but it can be used in off-road races, and it goes about 3 seconds per lap quicker than what the Sanchez could have done, 4 seconds a lap quicker than the 2 new trophy trucks. Just unbelievable that they do stuff like that, and it's such a shame. They could have easily made the BF 400 have the same characteristics that it does in terms of the way that it rides, the way that it drives, but just made it a little bit less powerful, just not made it so quick. And the fact that its top speed is one of the highest in the entire game of 127 miles per hour, the same as an X80 Proto when it's wheeling, it's just it boggles my mind that they can make it so overpowered. And it makes me question whether they do it on purpose a little bit. You know, they say, oh, we'll give him the trophy truck and the Desert Raid, this will make Bruffy happy, but let's put in the BF 400 and make him really annoyed. Like, it doesn't work anymore, because I've lost all hope that they know what they're doing in this respect. But it's still mildly annoying that we could have had some balance to the off-road class finally, and then the BF 400 comes along and just ruins it. So that puts us into a nice transition towards the other 2 bikes, the Cliffhanger and the Gargoyle. Very, very close in lap time between those 2. They obviously share exactly the same top speed as well. They're pretty much the same bike, to be honest, and it's nice that we have quick vehicles, quick bikes that are that sort of style. You know, that the chopper, the lean back style. Those vehicles in the motorbikes class have never been that quick. It's always been the high sports bikes and things like that have always been the quickest. And for these 2 new vehicles, the Cliffhanger and the Gargoyle, to be pretty much getting exactly the same lap time as the Carbon RS, that's very, very good, and it's nice to have a bit of variety there. But they are still ultimately off the pace of the top motorbikes in the class, the Akuma and the Barty, but they're still usable. You know, they're certainly usable for a bit of fun. I'm not exactly a fan of bikes, and I don't do bike races myself because I just don't enjoy it, but I would prefer riding those than the sports bikes if I was to do a bike race, to be honest. I find those more fun and interesting to ride than I do the other bikes. So good additions there, and I can't complain with those. Now, I think looking at this list of all these different vehicles, we have had quite a lot, and I think this is the most the highest number of vehicles that we've had released with a DLC, from what I can remember anyway. And some of them, as I mentioned, give us some class balance back, and from looking at the list, it seems like a lot of them take the class balance away more than what they give back. The muscle cars class is now well balanced. The sort of the rallying section of the sports class is now well balanced, with the Omnis and the Tropos Rallye taking it to the Kuruma. But we've had more vehicles that have taken away from that balance. Obviously the BF 400, the 3 new supercars, although they are reasonably well balanced with each other, they take away all of the ability for you to use any of the other supercars, and the RE7B is still a little bit quicker. The Tampa could have made the muscle cars class even more balanced. But then we come on to pretty much 2 vehicles that ruin class balance even more. Now, first of all, I'm going to talk about the Contender, because the Contender, it kind of ruined class balance for a class that was already ruined. So, you know, it's not too bad, the Contender. It is a lot quicker than all the other SUVs in the game, but the XLS Armoured was also a lot quicker than all the other SUVs in the game from the Finance and Felony DLC. We did have the Huntley S, which was the quickest for a long time. The new Ballers with the Executives DLC, the Baller LE in particular, did bring that gap down a lot, and it made the Baller relatively usable, and gave a little bit of an option, but the Huntley S was still the more dominant vehicle in the SUVs class. Then we got the XLS Armoured, and that became the dominant vehicle. Then straight after it we got the Contender, and that became the dominant vehicle. So it's another case of Rockstar making you spend your money on constantly quicker and quicker vehicles. But the Contender is at least an interesting vehicle to drive, and it doesn't necessarily ruin the SUVs class because it didn't have any balance to start with. So not too bad there, I'm not going to have too many complaints. But the Brioso is the next one I'm going to talk about, and that does ruin the compact class by a significant amount. Not since the Stallion GT in the Sports Classics class have we seen something that's been so dominant. Maybe the Shafter V12 Armoured in the sedans class, but yeah, it's another one of those really. The Brioso is so much quicker than everything else, and we did have some relative balance with the compact class. We had the Panto and the Rhapsody that were pretty much on equal footing in terms of lap time, and we also had the Blister and the Issy, which were a little bit further behind but still usable just for a bit of fun. And now with the Brioso being 4 seconds per lap quicker than everything else, it just makes compact races you have to have one of those or nothing really. So yeah, like I said, if I still cared, I would be going mad at all of these new vehicles and the way that they've ruined classes. But as it is, you know, Rockstar are going to do what Rockstar do, and nothing I say or have said in the past is ever going to change that. So the final vehicle to talk about is the Dune. The Dune is a fun vehicle, I guess. I don't see an awful lot of point to it because, you know, it's a Pegasus vehicle, and ultimately, to me, Pegasus vehicles always just seem to get forgotten about. And yes, you can use it in a race, but obviously it's way off the pace, you can't upgrade it. I wish we had a better system for Pegasus vehicles. I wish we had sort of a warehouse of large vehicles that we could store. For example, Pegasus vehicles, you know, things like the Dune, larger vehicles that we get from Pegasus that you can't normally fit in a proper garage. It would be nice if we had a larger garage or a warehouse or something to store those vehicles. Then we could actually, you know, own them just like a normal vehicle and take them to Los Santos Customs, for example, and modify them or whatever. It would be nice if we had that, because I think that as soon as you make a vehicle a Pegasus vehicle, and in particular for the Dune, it's quite deceiving really how it's just on the page with all the other cars. You know, with Southern San Andreas Motorsport, there's only a small note saying this is a Pegasus vehicle. I imagine a lot of people might not have even seen that and just bought it anyway, only to find out later that it's a Pegasus vehicle, and that if you ever wanted to use it in a racing situation, you don't even need to buy it. It's just available in the lobby screen as long as it's enabled. So yeah, the Dune is that one vehicle from the DLC that feels like there's no point to it. And it was just added as a bit of fun, I guess. All the other vehicles, from a racing perspective, they all have a bit of sense to them, even the Lynx, but it was just put in the wrong class. But the Dune, just one of those fun vehicles, but nothing any extra special to it really that makes it fun, I would say. So it's nice though, you know, it is nice, and it would help with role play and things like that because of all the liveries that you can have on. If you had to do, you know, racing specific role plays, or you wanted to do that sort of thing, it would certainly help with that. And it's an addition, let's say. It might not necessarily be useful to me or a lot of people, but it might be useful to some, and it's an addition. It's something else, and something a bit fresh and different, so you can't really complain too much about that. So that's pretty much it. I think I've talked about every single vehicle that we got from this DLC so far. I don't think I've missed anything. Obviously let me know if I have, but and I'll cover it in the next video. But I think that's everything. I think I've given my thoughts on all the vehicles. Feel free to leave some comments down below about what you think, what were good, what were bad in terms of the vehicles from this DLC. And then, as I say, in the next video in a few days time, obviously feel free to subscribe if you want to be notified of that. In that video I will be talking about the creator itself, stunt racers, all of the added extra features that we got, and the DLC in general. So I always try to cover everything in detail, and apologies if you weren't happy with me just rambling on for probably about half an hour this has been now, but that's just what I do. That's what these discussion videos are about. That's what these analysis videos are about. And I appreciate anybody who is still here listening to me rambling on. Like I said, let me know your thoughts, because I always like to hear what you guys have to say about the cars and all the new stuff and read it all through. So thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you so much for the support recently. I really, really do appreciate it. And I'll see you next time.